Welcome to this lecture on remote monitoring methods. After this lecture, you will be able to explain the advantages of the remote monitoring method as the contact method, to list ways of using remote sensing to monitor the environmental impact of energy facilities, and to describe the process of information collection. Remote environmental monitoring methods are based on the use of sounding fields to study the object. Such fields can be radio waves of different ranges, electromagnetic radiation, acoustic or gravitational fields. The main advantage of sounding fields as a contact research methods is that these fields allow you to study the observed object regardless of distance. Remote monitoring is carried out at relatively large distances from the object using equipment that can be installed on satellites, airplanes, helicopters, cars, ships, and other vehicles. This type of monitoring is used for exploring large territories than the contact type of monitoring would be too expensive or difficult. Remote sensing also allows collecting data on hazardous or difficult to access areas. Applications of remote sensing include monitoring of deforestation in areas such as the Amazon basin, the impact of climate change on glaciers and Arctic areas, and sensing of coastal and ocean depths. Aerospace monitoring allows investigating environmental problems and global climate change. Research includes mapping of deforestation and desertification, obtaining information on the state of the atmosphere, its contamination, water quality, radiation contamination, and characteristics of the ozone layer. In addition, remote sensing allows to monitor risk areas in the long term, identify environmental change factors, and help identify appropriate environmental management measures. There are several ways to use remote sensing to monitor the environmental impact of energy facilities. This could be studies of man-caused processes, air pollution by thermal power plant emissions, oil spills, vegetation destruction in areas affected by air emissions and acid rain, water pollution, both thermal and harmful substances. Studies of anthropogenic changes in hydrological regime, zones of flooding by reservoirs, transformation of ice regime of water bodies. Studies of climatic change, temperature change, areas with violation of permafrost along pipelines. Remote control of the objects can be performed in two ways, passive and active. In case of passive control, the sensing field coming from the object itself is received. Passive sensors detect natural radiation which is emitted or reflected by the observed object or environment. Reflected sunlight is the most common source of radiation measured by passive sensors. And in remote sensing of the environment, used sensors are adjusted to certain wavelengths from far infrared radiation throughout the frequencies of visible light to far ultraviolet radiation. In case of active control, the sensing field is created by some external source and directed to the object. Then the field reflected by the object is received. Radiometers and photometers are the most common devices that collect reflected and emitted radiation of the wide frequency range. The most common are visible and infrared sensors, followed by microwave, gamma, and rarely ultraviolet rays. They can be used to detect the radiation spectra of various chemicals, providing data on chemical concentrations in the atmosphere. Effective use of large amounts of information coming from aerospace monitoring requires the development and application of effective methods, technologies, software, and high-performance technical facilities for image processing. Image size can reach thousands of meters, and the file size of one such image can be 1 gigabyte or more. The satellite captures large areas several times a day. As a result, the information flow per day is hundreds of gigabytes. Hundreds of gigabytes to be processed and analyzed. Without special software and large computational power, it is impossible. Supercomputers are used to process data and obtain images and results that can be useful for scientists. Computer image processing allows to perform automated image decoding, obtain quantitative characteristic, visible digital remote sensing data. Remote monitoring data are used to compare images from different time periods to detect both short and long-term changes. For example, a series of maps of the atmosphere, rivers, soil, vegetation, landscapes that show the state of natural resources, anthropogenic impact, and pollution of the natural environment in different time periods are created. By comparing data, it is possible not only to estimate current changes, but also to forecast expected changes. Software for processing aerospace images provides a special procedure of overlaying several images, as a result of which a new image or table is created, in which all changes are recorded. So, in this lecture, you have learned about advantages of the remote monitoring method, ways of using remote sensing to monitor the environmental impact of energy facilities, and the process of information collection.